Hello. Today we are going to draw a cathedral church of a bishop. A bishop is someone who is the head of an area of churches in a religion. And we are going to draw a simplified version of a cathedral. I don't know if you know the word Trinity. If you don't, I would ask you to put it down here. Trinity means three. And in the Christian religion, there are three entities of God. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And early architects of cathedrals became quite enamored with threes. So the church would have three separate sections. And that was part of being a trinity. And the top section here is a triangle. And if you're worried about getting your triangle straight, you can always measure your three lines here, find the center part, and then draw straight up from there and make a dot and then come down. I've been doing this long enough that I can just sort of eyeball it. Now, a church took, a cathedral particularly, although some of the churches I'm sure took 100 years to build. So the cathedral took 100 years to build. And that's because it was very ornate. Ornate means fancy, and it also served as a warning place for problems. So there was a tower on each side, and the fellow who built the first tower, whoops, got to get that straight. The fellow who built the first tower was usually not around to build the second tower. So our towers are going to look somewhat different. And that was pretty typical. So even though we have three sections here, 1, 2, 3, and then we have 3 here, and then we're going to have 3 doors. Now this is a Gothic arch. It's pointed at the top. And the main door in the middle, of course we have 3 doors, is slightly larger. And if you did that worksheet, vocabulary worksheet, you know over the center door is a tin panum. That's not something in your ear. That's a symbolic drawing of Jesus, great big, and then the apostles are sort of big, and you and me would be little tiny things. I just made it squiggles, and this is, it's kind of a stick drawing, except he has on a robe, and then he would have a halo. After Justinian's mosaics, they started using halos, and more halo denoted who's the important guy. Now you can use anything you have around you to make the rose window. I don't know why it's called a rose, 'cause it looks more like a daisy. That's too big. Let's pop the center out of this one. And I'll give you a circles in class to make the rose window, or you can get a coin. The rose window was right in the middle, and it's sort of like the posies that you learned to draw in grade school. It had a circle in the middle, and you can just make a little circle, and then it had petals coming out like that. And I'm not going to require that you know the names of this, but I will tell you anyway. These were made, instead of with metal, these were held together with stone, and it was carved stone. Cathedrals were made by guilds. Guilds was the medieval term for unions. We have unions today for masons and carpenters, and they did in the Middle Ages as well. It's an old concept. So the more accomplished stonemasons would be the ones doing this tracery around the stained glass windows. all the stone had to be carved to fit together fairly tightly. Don't worry if it's not perfect, guys. If I were going for perfection, I don't think we'd be doing this. Anyway, most towns really put a lot of effort in. Now, they might have designs around this edge. I'm just going to put some designs like this. You could put a series of circles if you want. Think of it as we make it ornate as we possibly can. And I will show you some coloring book pages of cathedrals in class, and you can pick up ideas as far as designing from that. And it's kind of like your personal castle. It can be somewhat yours, and you can make it just as fancy as you want. All right, now these two towers were very important. Sometimes they had ornate tops like this on top, and I'm going to put just a series of squiggles that'll read as almost like a crown. And in here, again, would be that Gothic-shaped arch, and we're going to give it 3, just to keep our 3 theme going. And then inside this would be a bell. Now, sometimes there were more than one bell. If you were lucky enough to have the kind of cathedral that had multiple bells, you could actually ring them so that they made music. I'm sure you've heard of cathedrals and churches making music. Or it could be that this just rings the time of day, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, etc. How did they know? They use sundials. And if you don't know what a sundial is, we'll talk about it in class. Your doors would have Gothic arches in them as well. This one's just going to have 2 because it's not really part of the whole look here. And this door would be open for most services like funerals and christenings, or if that's baptism. Or if it was Sunday, this door here would be open and this door would be open. So it just depends on how big a service it is. These would have stained glass windows. Again, they would be shaped like arches, but they would have that Gothic arch center that's pointy. I've always thought it was interesting that the goth look that people take on, I don't know why they call it goth. It's just people wearing a lot of black. But Gothic is where we get that term. And these places were pretty colorful. These stained glass windows would be bright colors. Then you have, we're going to do a simple one with like a letter Y in the center. I don't know if you can hear the bells ringing, but that's the church bells behind my house. And they ring out the hour. And to call people to Mass, they play music. Now, this is probably done with a computer. We want to put a double line around there because this would be inset in stone. And you can add lots of nice bright colors to this. I'm not going to have you make pictures. The walls inside the church, if they went from here all the way up the side like this, then they might need a buttress. And a buttress was like something pushing on the outside so the wall wouldn't collapse from all the weight of the glass. I don't know if you've ever carried a piece of big glass, but they're quite heavy. We'll put some squares around this one. You can make this as ornate as you want to. Again, you might have 3 arches. And we'd have a door down here. Now, even if the church were locked for some reason, this door would be open for the fellow who rings the bells for the time of day. Or if you heard this bell ringing frantically at an odd time, just, you know it isn't 2 o'clock, but all of a sudden it's just ringing like crazy. That is a warning to get into the castle. Now, this cathedral would be inside the castle walls. And it was a lot like our tornado drill sounds that we have on Wednesdays. On this side, we're going to give it a domed side. And maybe if you wanted to, you could have 3 here with some smaller bells where they would play music, like Ave Maria or something. I know a lot of you, I was surprised that a lot of you didn't know what a stained glass window was. But we're going to put 3 bells in here. They're smaller and they're probably higher pitched. So they would have the little thing that makes the noise there. And then maybe some designs on the outside. Nothing too fancy, because I don't want you to spend an enormous amount of time on this. And then at the top of the church, we always have a crucifix or a cross, depending on how you've learned the term. And that's so everybody in town could see it. This would be one of the largest structures in the town. Even the king or lord of the manor's house would not be as big as the cathedral. And then we have this kind of, I call them W's. This is slate roofs that were on the tops of churches, and any stone building would have a slate roof back then. And we have slate roofs in Columbus. There's originally, at the turn of the last century, a lot of the buildings have slate roofs. So you might have a slate roof on your house. And we'll just put some little ones down here. And you can shade in here to show that that is underneath the roof. And then we'll put a little door here. We'll try and keep the doors the same size. And let's see, do we need anything else? We could put a small window here, again shaped like a Gothic arch. We won't need one here because we have these big ones. And I would double line these. And I will show you on the overhead in class various cathedrals, and you can add some fancy stuff. They would also have what's called a relic, and I'll put that up here. You can put your notes on the other page or whatever. A relic is usually something that belonged to a holy person. Like in Europe, they have supposedly the Blessed Virgin Mary's veil. They have sometimes parts of a saint, particularly saints that were cut up in pieces. So all those things made your church or your cathedral an important place to go. And they were often on top of steps. For steps, the easiest way for us to draw them is a series of rectangles that do this. And then you could have some steps going down on this side for the side door, and some steps going down on this side for that one. And whoops. Now the person going in here would be someone who is warning of trouble, and the person going in here would be playing some sort of tune to tell people it's time to come to Mass. And that's it for your cathedral. Now we will color, you can put some stones in there. I like them in groups of 3 or 5 because that says, okay, you don't have to fill it in completely. Now I know that there are people watching this tape that will fill it in completely. I am not going to stand in your way. You can do that if you want to, but you do not have to. And then we will look at how to paint this in class. I would like this done in watercolor. You can do the walls with a gray pencil like this and just lightly shade over. But these will be bright colors, reds, yellows, blues, all the primary and secondary color. Primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. Secondary are violet, green, and orange. So bright colors in the stained glass windows. If you would like to put stained glass windows here, that would be nice. You wouldn't have them here. So that's it. And this will be due this week, I would think, on Friday. So that's 55 points. I'll put it here. 55 points. Friday. painted, and ready to go. We will do other things in class, but this is, I know a lot of you like extra time, so thank you.